Hey guys, welcome back here to today's edition of Intuitive Angling, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel and hanging with me a little bit. And today, guys, we're going to be talking about the really productive areas on the lake that nobody thinks to fish. These are the inobvious spots that get overlooked by everybody. The thing about bass fishing anymore is there's so much information out there and there's so many videos that people always wind up on the best water. It's like there are things in bass fishing we'll talk about here today that just, they get a lot of attention. They're obvious. It's things that people look for. And some of the stuff I'm going to talk about today, the fish will move to these areas a lot of times out of pressure to get away from everybody fishing on those obvious spots. So I'm going to identify what some of the most inobvious places on the lake are that you can catch fish in today's episode. Also, guys, two or three quick things before we get started. I just want to remind you that we still have a few of my Blaukat black with blue tinsel jigs on the Cumberland Pro Lures website. This is a special run, guys. We don't carry this color in a tackle warehouse. You can only get it through the Cumberland Pro Lures website. Black with blue tinsel. It's one of my favorite colors. Super labor intensive. That's why we don't have it in tackle warehouses. They take so long to tie that it's hard to make very many of them. But we're having a special run, so I'll have the Cumberland Pro Lures website in the link in the description if you guys would like to order some. And also, guys, real quick, Bat has got their Get Ready for Spring fishing sale on my Signature Series glasses, my RB2s and 3s. 30% off this month. You can get them through Bat. I'll put that link in the description. So appreciate that, guys. Okay, this is one of the things I always look for because you guys that have watched my channel very much, I hate to fish around anybody. It's like my ideal day on the bass when I go fishing is I don't want to see another human being in any shape or form. I don't want to see a house. I don't want to see a boat. I don't want to hear anything. I just want to go fishing in the complete purity of nature. So I'm always looking for these places like I'm talking about that get overlooked where people don't fish it. Now, here's one of the reasons why this works is the fact that with the advent of YouTube and all the bass fishing TV shows and everything and all the instructional videos like I do, everybody knows where the good places are. Like all the rock transition and the channel intersections and drop-offs and, different type of seasonal areas that the fish move into. This is very well known and most people wind up on these places. Let me give you a prime example. Back when I very first started fishing Kentucky Lake, which, this is, probably been, it's been 45 years ago. The very first time I fished it was 1984. There was no GPS. There were, the maps we had were very rudimentary. I mean, they weren't even really contour maps. You could get like them from the National Geographic Survey, but the maps were terrible. There was no GPS. We had two-dimensional sonar, and a few of the anglers that happened to find those creek channel intersections, like on Kentucky Lake where the creeks would run out to the main river and drop off, these creek channel intersections held giant schools of bass. I mean, like hundreds and hundreds of bass they'd school up on these channel intersections. And as soon as mapping technology and GPS came out and improved mapping, everybody knew where those places are, and they're no good anymore. It's like they've been ruined because everybody fishes them. And that's the same with a lot of different stuff. That's the same with certain areas of the lake, get a lot of attention, and as a result, those areas, they lose their productivity or they have a lot more of a limited window. Okay, so here is some of the areas I want to talk about that are overlooked, that are really good, that a lot of people just don't mess with fishing. Number one thing, guys, not necessarily in any particular order because they all work good, but the first thing we'll talk about is any type of isolated cover that you have to go out of the way to get to. So you have to, before you understand how productive this isolated cover is, you have to sort of understand the mentality of a lot of anglers. Most bass anglers are a little bit lazy in terms of they don't want to go out of their way, or they don't want to take time to fish something that there may not be a lot of fish there. And so, for example, if you're running down the lake and you're just running down this nothing looking bank, there's like miles and miles of a nothing looking bank, and all of a sudden there happens to be a lay down tree in the water. And that's the only lay down tree for like a half mile. That's literally the only piece of cover. 99% of the anglers are going to just run right past it because it's not worth their time to shut the boat down, idle over there, and put the trolling motor up to fish one piece of cover. This is one of the biggest mistakes you can make, is because isolated cover on, especially on a public body of water that gets a lot of heavy fishing pressure, they are very high percentage areas. I don't care where they're set up at. And it doesn't have to be just, it could be anything. It could be one boat dock. You know, most people when they fish boat docks, they want to set down on a line of docks where they can fish, for, quite a bit of time, just fishing a bunch of docks. A lot of people won't stop to fish one dock or one tree or one stump or one telephone pole in the water or whatever it may be, or a little clump of lily pads that's that big around. There's like 3 or 4 lily pads. They just will not take the effort to do that. And guys, this is one of for the people that are in the know about this, this is one of the most productive ways to catch fish. It's a very high percentage area. Most of the time, you're not going to catch a lot of fish on it, but it's usually you can pick up, one. There's usually one resident fish living there. Prime example of this was in 1998. I almost won the Bassmaster Classic, the one Denny Breyer won. I finished 3rd in that tournament, and I had the fish on to win it. And my pattern in that tournament was just that. I was going and looking for these out of the way, isolated pieces of cover. So there would be maybe there would be a little log that's out on this mud flat, and that's the only log out there. There wasn't anything else. There may be, one stump or something out there. And I almost won the Classic fishing that junk pattern of those isolated objects. So never pass that up. Another area gets overlooked quite a bit is any type of a mud line. Now, mud lines are very, very common, especially on public bodies of water, because if you fish like up in the creek arm of the lake or up in the upper river arm of the lake, or even sometimes on the main part of the lake, if you notice when you start out in the morning, the water clarity is pretty much equal. It's equal out in the lake and it's equal on the bank. But by about noon, if there's a lot of boating activity, especially like on the weekend or something, it's going to stir. There's going to be these waves are hitting the bank, and you're going to have all this, dirt and stained water moving off the bank from being eroded from those waves hitting the bank. So it forms a mud line. These mud lines are very, very common on about any lake in the country if you have a lot of boats running around the water. These bass will use those mud lines almost immediately as they form. So they use it as cover, because if you have a lake especially that's got some clean water, mud lines work better if you have water visibility throughout the lake that's over 3 feet. So if you have a lake that's got some pretty clean water in it and you have a formation of a mud line that takes place every day around noon or something like that, those fish will set up on those mud lines just like they would shade. So you can take a crankbait or spinnerbait or whatever and fish those mud lines that are created by the boat wakes. That gets overlooked a lot. I remember several tournaments that I fished, guys, on the Coosa River lakes in Alabama, where I was running up the river. It was sort of clay, sort of mud clay banks up there. Water was pretty clean. And by about noon or 1 o'clock, there'd be enough boats running back and forth that you'd have this mud line 3 or 4 feet off the bank. I caught a lot of decent fish, fishing those mud lines, so you don't want to ever overlook that. Another area, guys, is the nothing looking banks. Now, most people, here again, when you're trying to formulate your bass fishing strategy, one of the things you have to do is you have to get in the mind of your other anglers that are out there. A lot of people say, well, I'm not worrying about what everybody else is doing. I'm just going to, focus on the fish. I'm not going to worry about anyone else. You can't do that. You have to be aware. It's just like if you're in battle or something like that, you have to be aware of your enemy. I'm not saying your anglers or fellow anglers are enemies, but you have to be aware of what everybody else is doing in fishing, because that tells you where the better areas are and areas you need to sort of stay away from. So most people, when they're looking for places to fish, unless they're looking at their cheater box, which is a whole other story. But if you're looking for places to fish as a real traditional bass angler, you're going to pull up on those areas that look good. A nice looking rocky bank, a nice looking riprap bank, a bank that's got a bunch of cover on it, like a good grass bed or a big lily pad field, or nice row of boat docks or some good laydowns or something. You're going to be looking for the visual attractiveness of an area. And since most anglers fish like that, in fact, 99% of the anglers fish like that, these nothing looking areas get overlooked. And what happens is bass, they will move off of a really prime piece of cover if there's too much activity and too much pressure, and they will go to what I call secondary type cover. And the secondary type cover is not as diverse, and it doesn't offer as many options for the fish, but it gives the fish a chance to get away from that pressure and that noise and that activity, and they will do that. So one of the things that you want to look at is sort of, you have to restructure your thinking. So next time you're out fishing and you're running down the lake, purposely look and say, okay, what does not look good? What when I'm running down this lake, what is the type of an area, or what's going to come upon me here that it doesn't look that good for fishing? That's what you want to try to fish. And especially if those nothing looking areas have somewhat of a proximity to deeper water. If you have a nothing looking area that is like way up on a flat, where you have to idle forever over 2 or 3 foot of water to get to the bank there, probably not going to be that good. But if you've got a nothing looking bank that doesn't have a lot of good looking cover on it, it may have just like a flat bank with some gravel or clay or sand or whatever with not any visible cover. But if you have somewhat of a proximity to deeper water around that nothing looking area, a lot of times those fish will use that. They love being on those type of areas, and they'll just sit there on the nothing looking banks. I've done really good, in areas like that. So pay close attention to that when you're running down the lake. But those are the 3 main things, guys. Those are the 3 big deals as far as, be able to, catch fish in areas that just get overlooked a lot. So hope it helps you guys do good, and we'll talk later. See you.